Hello and welcome to the Uneducated PT Podcast with me, your host, Carl O'Rourke. The goal of this podcast is to bring on interesting and knowledgeable people from all walks of life, learn a little something from each conversation, and for you, the listener, to learn something from each episode. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, press the box below, show some support, and I'll see you on the next episode. Shane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Carl. Thanks for having me.
Round two. For anyone who doesn't know you, can you just explain a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Shane Walsh. I'm the owner of Shane Walsh Fitness. I've been in the industry for about 5.5 years, nearly 6 years at this stage. So I have a little bit of like an X Factor story. So in 2017, I got very ill, got blood clots and fluid on my lungs. I was in recruitment and sales before that. Body was just like, no, you need to give up something. So fell into a really, really bad place. Kind of starting to get a bit fitter and healthier. Went traveling, found myself, shaved the head, become a monk. And then
where did you travel?
Asia,
yeah.
The usual. Everyone finds themselves in Asia.
Yeah.
So when I was over there, I started doing I was training myself over there, and people were kind of jumping in on the sessions.
Yeah.
So I actually booked my PT course in the airport in Hanoi on the way home.
No way.
And then started doing the courses, and since then, just kind of going from
So
there.
did you not have a background in fitness before this?
I had never set foot in a gym before I was 29. So I used to play football up until about 23, 24, and then...
Which we spoke about off
camera. Yeah, off camera. We won't talk about that. And then I just completely stopped and literally found the sessions. Literally went on the piss all the time and literally wrong ladder against the wrong wall.
Yeah.
And then just kind of found myself, should I say, and definitely a lot happier now doing this. It's great. It's a very rewarding job. It can be stressful, but it's quite rewarding.
Do you find that makes you more empathetic and relatable to the type of clients you work with, that you weren't like in a fitness background before? It was something that you found later on? Yeah,
I'd like to think so. I think the bluntness as well comes from that kind of as well. It's kind of like you need to kind of basically look after yourself and kind of basically sort out your mental health and stuff. I'd be quite a big advocate on that, because without therapy I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now. So I think the massive thing for that was being able to hold a conversation with someone and actually understand them, because it definitely helped me understand myself, but it also helped them to understand themselves. And if you understand your client or who's sitting in front of you, it's a hell of a lot easier to kind of manage expectations.
Yeah. So what kind of clients do you work with? What are the kind of struggles that they have and that you help them with through your time with them? Yeah,
so mainly it's kind of people who've come from the good old slimming clubs, yo-yo dieting backgrounds, emotional eating, stress eating, PCOS, perimenopause, menopause, HA. I only really coach women. I haven't coached a man in probably about 18 months, 2 years. Men don't listen.
I noticed that as well, yeah.
We do not listen as a gender. So
why do you think that is? Do you think that's an ego thing?
That's 100% ego. Because if you think about it, like if you saw a lad in the gym right now, what's the thing they want to do? They want to lift heavy, get jacked, and then you're kind of like, yeah, but you probably need to kind of lose a little bit to kind of put the muscle back on. They're like, no, I just want to get jacked to fill out the t-shirt and get the disco muscles. So we've all been there.
Yeah, I always say about lads and women, like the differences between them is that lads need to reduce their weight in half and women need to double it in weight, because women are very cautious in terms of what they do, and then lads are very kind of ego, reckless, rash. Yeah,
I think as I was talking to someone yesterday, and they're kind of like, they were meant to be going for a job interview, they wouldn't go for it because of self-confidence. So they were like, because of what other people are thinking. But a male would have no problem going for another job, because they'd be like, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
It's quite mad how the confidence levels and the belief systems for the two different genders and other genders and different sexual orientations, but the main two would be, they're very, very different, and the different reactions they have.
And also even in terms of taking on advice as well, I think like my experience with training men, they'll listen to what you say, they'll agree with it, and then they'll go and do their own thing, whereas women will take your advice on board and actually implement it.
100%.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to say to that. It's the truth.
Okay, so from there, what I want to do is I want to go into a couple of quotes from you that I really enjoyed, and I want you to just go into a little bit more context in terms of them, from speaking on behalf of the type of clients that you work with. So something you said was, one of the biggest things when it comes to those who get their fat loss results versus those who don't is that the ones who get the result accept that good enough is better than giving up. All right. So my question to you is, how do we coach people out of this perfectionist mindset that they've acquired over time that you're actually speaking about?
So I think perfection can aid us, and perfection can not aid us. It can almost paralyze us from doing anything. And I think it can be really, really multifaceted in the fact that it can be from trauma, it can be from sexual abuse, it can be from parents belittling people or bullying or some sort of trauma or grief in their lives. So it's a protective tool that people use as a fear of judgment from others. So if we can't control what other people are thinking, what's one way we can control it? We can go inwards and do nothing about it. So for often when people are thinking about perfection around food, food isn't the issue. It's never the issue. It's always how we're feeling about ourselves that's projected onto it. Think of wordings like, I've been good today, or I've been bad today. It's like, well, you haven't been good because you had a salad, and you haven't been bad because you had carbs. You're eating food. Food is food. Food is fuel. Food is great. But the whole thing with perfection is it's based off this flaw that you have to be perfect all the time. You're not allowed mistakes or make mistakes. So it's kind of like it's the inability to accept that you're actually human. And I think with food, there's times you're going to overeat. Yeah. There's times you're going to stress eat. There's times you're going to emotional eat. It's what makes you human, and being aware of that. But too many people are like, well, if I emotionally eat, I'm weak. I shouldn't be doing this. I can't be doing this. I've failed. And then they're kind of like, no, I'm shutting off. And then I go completely inward bound and then don't know how to deal with it, don't want to deal with it. But I don't think a lot of people have the skill set because they haven't been taught from childhood. Ireland has been like a kind of quite a suppressed society for a long time. Like just get on with it. Or if someone's talking about their feelings, like, oh, they're soft. That's been in Ireland for a very long time. And I think the old school mentality is changing. So people haven't been taught actually how to deal with their feelings and deal with how they're feeling about themselves. And that's often projected onto the food. It's that fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of success, which I don't think a lot of people realize. They don't feel they're worthy of getting the results they're looking for. What makes Carl more worthy to have success at his podcast or his football than anyone else? Like there's no...
It's just self-belief, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think belief is kind of one of these things that's kind of thrown around or whatever it may be. But like, I think the only way you actually get belief in yourself is from actually doing something. Yeah. And I think, yes, you will fall. I've fallen many times. I've fallen many times doing the work that I do. There's things you launch and that things don't go well, but it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of, there's feedback there for you as well. But I think the first thing you need to do is try and gain awareness of what's that tool protecting you from. That awareness tool, what's that food doing for you? Why are you giving it away? Why is it giving that control mechanism away? Why is it so important for you to be accepted? Why is it so important for you to be validated? You're relying on other people to do something that you can do for you. And it's hard to accept. I would recommend everyone goes to therapy. It's one of the things that we said at the talk yesterday. Aiming for good enough. So one of the exercises I always get to do with my clients is write out a good enough week. Yeah. Or write out a perfect week with training and nutrition. And often what happens is the perfectionists who would identify as a perfectionist would have an awful lot in the good enough category. It would be like, right, all my water, all my veggies, all my walks, all my steps, etc. And then in the perfect thing, another layer on top of that. But then you kind of like, well, I asked them a question. It's like, well, do you notice anything about the good enough? And they're like, yeah, there's a lot there. It's like, yeah, there's a lot that can go wrong. So break it down even further. Well, what's good enough for you? Well, I have 3 meals, 3 snacks a day, and I go for a walk 3 times a week. And they're kind of like, you can almost see the shoulders drop. It's like, it's that easy. It's like, it's a lot easier doing it that way than the way you're putting pressure on yourself to do it. Aiming for, if you want to have meals out and drinks out, aiming for a weekly calorie average. So say if your target is like 2,000 calories a day, think of it like money. You've got 7 days in a week, that's 14,000 calories in a week. Break it down. If you overspend by you have 3,000 calories eaten on Saturday and Sunday, that's 6,000. 6,000 minus 14,000 is 8,000. That's quick maths. So 8,000.
My brain just went
yeah, the matrix. So you've got 8,000 calories left for the rest of the week. So you can have that wiggle room of those meals out and still get to your goal if you aim for that good enough mentality of spreading it out across the week. Too many people are focused on one meal. It's literally impossible for you to have gained weight or to gain fat, should I say, in one meal. Even if you had 10,000 calories, which is a lot of calories, it's 4 medium Domino's pizzas. That's a lot of food. Yeah. It's literally impossible for you to have gained 1 pound of fat. Yeah. And there's research showing that by Bill Campbell. loads and loads of research. Will the weight go up? Yes, but the scales doesn't measure fat loss. Scales measures weight loss. So there's two different parameters and two different metrics. The other thing you could do is just do something that's going to help you. I know today, I had a good bit of food yesterday, so all I'm doing today is going to go for a walk.
Yeah.
That's all I'm doing today. Get my food shop in, go for a walk. That's all I'm doing, happy with that. Then allowing yourself to make those mistakes. If you look at, right, what's good enough for you, what's coming up ahead of you for the week, being realistic with your expectations. So you know you've got a busy work week, the kids are going back to school, you have to get all the school uniforms and stuff. You're kind of like, right, take a step back. What's good enough for me this week? I am literally just going to get a food shop in and I'm going to go to the gym twice. That's a good enough week. And that's going to bring you closer than this whole thing of I'm doing nothing. And if you can bring that awareness, aim for good enough, weekly calorie average, just doing something, I think it's a hell of a lot easier to get rid of that perfection mentality.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is, especially with coaching fat loss, is managing their expectations as well.
Hard thing to do.
Yeah. And what I've noticed even with coaching people is that, like, you can tell them all this and you can tell them not to feel guilty around their food decisions, but again, they'll still probably do it then again next week, and you have to keep on re-emphasizing and it takes a long time for for the penny to drop almost.
Yeah, because like the food guilt element has been taught. It's that fear of judgment again. If you're a kid and you kind of like, you've been told to finish a plate of food all your life,
yeah,
and then you're kind of like
clean your plate mentality,
basically. And then all of a sudden you're kind of like, no, hang on, I'm trying to work on when I'm full. You're still gonna eat the odd time when it's the whole plate, like Christmas dinner kind of feeling. There's times like that. We all do it. Yeah. But it's kind of reducing the times that you do it and understanding why you do it. If you so you stress eating, are you emotionally, are you trying to numb yourself with food? Because food isn't the issue, as I said already. But
well, that goes back to the perfectionist mindset that you spoke about. It's like, okay, it's not like you're never gonna feel guilty around food again, but the idea is that we make sure that that's less and less, or you're still gonna emotionally eat. Like, I still emotionally eat, you probably still emotionally eat, but it's less and less, and that's.
But also, emotionally eat is a positive thing too. Yeah. Like birthdays, Christmas, Easter. Like it's not only negative, but I think a lot of people with food guilt means you've done something wrong, and the overarching element is shame. I am a bad person for doing this. Kind of like, no, Vladimir Putin's a bad person. You're not a bad person for having that extra cake last night.
Yeah, you didn't invade Ukraine.
Exactly, exactly.
Just invaded the press.
Like, I know I'm trying to take the piss out of something, like I'm trying to like belittle it as much as possible.
It's trying to create perspective to someone who's wrapped up in their head.
Perspective is huge when it comes to the element of food, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily have a weight loss issue. They have a perspective issue. Yeah. And that's, I know there's other elements with obesity and stuff like that. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the element of when emotions get very, very high, they lose all perspective and they go very, very quick to the quick fix, rather than taking a step back and saying, taking a big deep breath in, right, what can I do here? Is this food going to solve this problem? If the problem wasn't food's not going to solve it. Yeah.
That's something that I've kind of figured out over the last year or two, is that, like, coaching isn't about giving someone a calorie goal or a step goal. It's about regulating their emotions, essentially.
It is, yeah. You're kind of part-time therapist while staying in your lane. It's kind of like not being afraid to kind of outsource your help to someone else. Because I think I've got clients at the minute who are working with therapists in the background, and it's being not having that ego, because it is an ego-driven industry. That it's kind of
I can do everything.
But you have to stay in your lane. Yeah. And I know that's something that we're going to be talking about later on, but I think the perspective thing is a massive thing. Yeah.
A second quote that I wanted to talk about, and I'm just going to put this on mute, I apologise for that. So, if the cost of your dream body comes at the expense of your relationship with food or your mental health, I would strongly question, is that the right approach for you? So my question is, how can we distinguish between what's the right approach and the wrong approach when it comes to weight loss?
Yeah, so I would often say to clients, the dream body that you probably want is going to weigh a lot more than you think. And they're kind of like, what do you mean? It's kind of like, well, when you felt more confident in your clothes, what weight were you? And you're like, I have no idea. There's the answer. They're like, the weight thing is this measure that people will use, I think particularly for people who've come from Slimming Club backgrounds, because Karen puts you up on a step and shames you for not going down on the scales and then blames weights for doing it. It's like, no. The approach is the issue. So with the dream body, it's kind of like, it's distinguishing what the best approach is for you and what's the wrong approach. I would always say, right, I would always ask the questions to kind of clients is, right, will this approach allow you to enjoy your weekends? And they'll be like, so if we're talking about the restricted approach, they'll be like, probably no. Will this approach restrict food groups? Yes, it'll probably be the carbs, fats, sugars, sweeteners. It's like, well, what's left? Can you stick to it longer than a week? And they'll probably say no. Does it impact your relationship with food? And they'll probably, this will be the question that we kind of struggle with. They'll kind of think about it a little bit more, and they'll probably say yes. Do you have food guilt? And they'll probably say yes. And does it work on your beliefs, habits, or behaviours? And they'll probably say no. So none of those answers have been positive. So the approach that most people go with is that restrictive mentality. But a lot of people are addicted to that restriction because it's all they know. And it's caused by like kind of like the mind is chaotic. So like if you think about it, like your thoughts can go this way 1 second, over this second. It doesn't know how to kind of compartmentalize it. And then food is the one that kind of comes in. We latch onto a feeling, we latch onto a story, we latch onto a belief. So if we worked on the habits, beliefs, behaviours, it would be a hell of a lot better than just going for another quick fix. The quick fixes actually make the journey longer.
Yeah.
And it's the irony of it. It's kind of like, well, I'm just going to do an 8-week shred and cut out all carbs. Like, yeah, you may look great.
And you're doing that for the next 10 years.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you're always on a diet, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like the yo-yo dieting thing, it is addicted to that restriction. But people will say it's all I know. It's the only thing I've ever done. It's like, but what have you done to address it? What have you changed to actually address the actual issue? Because the food isn't the issue. It's kind of saying, well, I don't deserve to have these foods. And it's kind of like when people actually step up and kind of actually acknowledge that and have that awareness, it does take a lot of time to get to it. But it's also being clear on your values. Like you mentioned the food guilt thing earlier. People aren't clear on what they actually value, and values can change over time. It's kind of like, I kind of break the values into like a 5 Fs. Yeah. It's fitness, fun, family, focus, and then you've got finance. Okay. So you rank them in 1 to 5 of order. And most people would kind of get to kind of fitness and health will be number 3. And they wonder why they're not prioritizing it as much as they should. Family and friends is normally number 1. They're kind of like, that's why all their actions are kind of bringing the kids to GAA or soccer. And then probably number 2 is probably somewhere in the middle of either kind of finance or kind of mental health element of it. And then they're kind of wondering why the fitness and health isn't being looked after. It's a lower rank, but if you can say to themselves, like, right, so your priorities, fitness and health number 3, but you want them to be number 1. So what do we need to get it to go up? Or if fitness and health, you're kind of like, well, I enjoy having fun is number 2. Your meals out are important to you. Let's try and work an approach that you get to have your odd session with your mates or your meals out with your mates, and I'll teach you how to do that. That will help to get them to accept that it's actually okay to have that more food the odd time. But if it's the constant mechanism where food is your only reward, food isn't the issue. Your lack of reward system is the issue.
So it's not the decision, but the context around the decision. Like I would say, like a core value of mine would probably be social connection. So, you know, whether that's, you know, spending time with my family or spending time with my friends. And like, I was watching the football last night with 5 of my mates, and we ordered a Domino's and we sat there and watched it, and like I enjoyed every minute of it. Like, so for me, like the context around that decision, because social connection and eating around friends is important to me, that was the right decision. But then for me to just like get a Domino's on a Wednesday because I forgot to eat all day, and you know, I haven't planned my day, and it was a pure reactive decision, for me then I would be guilty about that. But that was the wrong decision for me, because that wasn't living in line with my values.
But it was the wrong decision for you, or was it a short-term solution?
It's a short-term solution.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a wrong decision. I just think it was the decision in that moment to get through that moment. But if it's happening more often than not, if it's happening once every so often, it will happen.
If it's leading to destructive behaviours or you not feeling the way you want to feel, then there's a disconnect there somehow.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. And then the third quote that I wanted to read out to you, which I really liked, was, the more you focus on exercise and eating as a way to lose weight, the longer it will take. The more you focus on mindset and behaviour, the less time it will take. And obviously you've expanded on that a little bit today as well anyway.
Yeah, so when I'm talking about this kind of stuff with clients, it's kind of like, I call it like the 97-3 weight loss strategy, or 97 hyphen. Weight loss strategy. It's kind of like, most people when they're trying to lose weight, what's the first thing they do? They increase their exercise.
Increase their exercise and reduce, try to restrict as much
cut out
calories.
all food. just survive on air.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think when people that the one thing they focus on is that exercise thing, and that's the 3%. That has about 3% of 100% of the total thing that we should be focusing on. But if you look at your habits, your behaviours, your food, all that kind of stuff, that's more in line with the 97%. So people are only focused, like we actually don't burn as many calories as people think. If you see exercise as a way of burning calories, there's other things at play. Yeah. So if you focus on the behaviours, the habits, belief systems, what you actually need to do, your coping mechanisms, they're the bits that will get you long-lasting results. And long-lasting results to you will be different to long-lasting results for me. And it'll be different for Karen, to Tara. It'll be very, very different to everyone else. If you drop food guilt for the first time ever, and you could be able to, that could be someone's mecca. And then it could be for someone else, it's like, right, it's doing 100 kg hip thrust. Everyone has very, very different things, but a lot of people will focus just on the training. We don't understand why we actually do things. We don't understand why we use food as the crutch. We don't, like, it's that awareness piece again. A lot of people have this belief system that when they say things like, I'm an emotional eater. And it's like, no, you're not an emotional eater. You're someone who eats emotionally. And that disconnect, again, disassociates yourself from the actual story, because if you say I'm an emotional eater, you're going to act like that. Yeah. And then you're kind of like, well, you're not surprised when it happens.
Oh, I'm always like this. This is just something I always do.
I'm a perfectionist, kind of but you're not a perfectionist. You're someone who has perfectionist mentality or perfectionist tendencies, but it's not on your passport. You don't go into immigration each time you're like, perfectionist checking in. It's not how it works. So it's a 97 weight loss, 97.3 weight loss thing is kind of like what I would kind of say to people. It's like, focus on maybe becoming a little bit more process based, because people are like, well, I want to lose like 6 kg. It's like, well, what do you need to get to do that, or what do you need to get there? And people were like, well, I need to increase my exercise. No, you probably need to say, right, let's get more regular meals, because most people, I always find it, like, I know I did this for years, was you didn't eat all day because you're on the go. And then you wonder why your head's in the press. Yeah,
starving, craving calories.
And then you can't stop eating, and you just find
Well, that's why a lot of people think that they're addicted to sugar, isn't it? It's because they over-restrict all throughout the day, and then when they get to a press, like... Yeah,
there's a lot of people think they're addicted to a lot of things. I think people are addicted to their own stories. But the sugar thing is like, you're 100% not addicted to sugar. You're not addicted to sweeteners. You're not addicted to any of this. It's generally, if you're getting sugar cravings, it could be your time of the month. It could be...
But you can understand why people would feel like they are like that, because, like, if you haven't ate all day, if you've been on this restrictive diet, and then, you know, you get to the end of the day and you're sitting there and you're a little bit bored, and you go to press to have, you know, one biscuit, and then you have the second, and then the third, and you can't, you feel like you've no willpower to stop. Yeah. But it's because you've been on this restrictive diet where you haven't consumed enough calories.
Or you haven't looked after yourself, you haven't prioritised yourself. It's kind of, there are days, like I know yesterday was one of those days that was all over the place. Yeah. But I was kind of like, right, before I leave to go to the event, I was like, I need to get a pretty decent breakfast in, brought some snacks with me. Yeah. But that might seem too simple for some people. And then we're kind of like, no, I need to have my protein yogurt, I need to have my protein shake, I need to have X, Y, Z. No, just bring some fruit and a protein bar in the car, and then get something when you, and I was kind of like, I was like 3 or half 2 by the time I was leaving. It's kind of like, right, I'm not going to be getting home until probably close to like 5:30, 6 o'clock here. So I'm going to have to get something before I leave. Otherwise, I probably would have fallen asleep at the wheel. Yeah. So it's having that awareness of what's going to work.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's you checking in on yourself and being aware, but where a lot of people, they'll go through the day not pausing to think that, oh, I should...
The pause is the big thing. Yeah. Pause is a big thing. I think if you think about, like, you were watching the match yesterday with your mates, I guarantee you probably weren't present with your, like, hand to mouth.
Shouting at the telly.
Yeah, shouting at Liverpool, let's say. Yeah, well, I don't blame you. As a United fan.
I was watching the United match with 5 United fans as well, which was...
I was flicking in between the rugby and the Ireland match, the United match.
But you're right, I was...
Hand to mouth. So most people are like, they're distracted while they're doing something. They're on their phones while they're having lunch. They're working from their desk. Yeah. But if you actually... There's this disconnect between food and you. Yeah. And if you say to yourself, right, what's the next one going to do for me that the last one didn't? The one that helps me in the evenings is, am I hungry enough for fruit? I've never met anyone that's hungry enough for fruit. Yeah. Fruits, and sometimes I'll end up I'll have the fruit, and I'll probably I'll go, like, if I have the fruit, I'll be like, right, I'm still hungry. Then I'll get the bar, but I'm still getting the fruit in.
Yeah. Well, what do you think is the difference between being like, okay, I know that I don't want the fruit, so I know that I'm not hungry, but I still want the chocolate bar. But I also am trying to stick within my calories or make better food decisions. What would be your approach for a client? That would you be like, okay, have the bar, but just be mindful when you're having it?
I'd be kind of like, right, I'd be kind of saying, right, if you want the bar, have the bar. There's nothing wrong with that. Like if someone's counting calories, and maybe enter in your calories into the app the day before, the night before, then you can see, right, I've got 300 calories left for my cup of tea when I get to chill out with my partner in the evenings, having my chocolate bar, and I'm able to do it that way. If it's a case, it's the only thing that you're having, or it's the only mechanism that you're having, it's a little bit different. And then it's kind of like, well, probably need a better reward system. And some people say, like, I want that sweet thing after dinner, but that's a memory that you have with when you're a kid. I know brown bread is my thing. It reminds me of my granny. So that smell, whenever I walk past the bakery, I'm like, get me in. It's just take my money. But people have this sweet tea. It's like, yeah, that's okay, but you don't, maybe not buy the big share bag, or might not buy the multi-packs. Maybe just get, like, I used to kind of like the small Whispas or the small bars. Kind of like I get one of those and check in and say, right, do I need another one? Sometimes I do. I check in, have I eaten enough today? Probably not. Am I tired did I drink enough water? Am I tired? Am I stressed? Am I anxious? Am I lonely? Check it in yourself and kind of saying, right, what's actually going on with myself? And some people kind of like, they don't know what's going on, or they know what's going on, and they're kind of like, well, this is going to fix this short term, but I'm going to do it anyway. But I'm kind of like, well, if you've done it every other time and it hasn't fixed the problem, why do we continue to use that mechanism? It's kind of like, it's the only thing they know is normally the answer. It's kind of like, well, if you have that pause. So I use, like, sometimes with clients who are trying to work on emotional eating, the food and mood journal. So they write in what time they're having their food and where they're having it. And more often than not, they'll spot a trend after about a week. Is like all the foods, or in the evenings, they haven't eaten enough during the day, or they're having their foods in the living room watching TV. And you're kind of like, right, let's set a rule, we're having food at the kitchen. But sometimes people can find that another way of kind of like, no one's in the kitchen, so I'm going to eat that a little bit more because of that secret eating thing they may have. So it is multifaceted and aware that understanding the way people work. But if you have 3 meals, 2 or 3 snacks a day, more often than not,
you're not going to be.
You'll be fine.
Because no one craves a chocolate bar first thing in the morning. It's usually in the evenings where you associate with that kind of.
Yeah, and sometimes what can happen, like, say if you're like, oh, I'm craving chocolate or whatever, it's kind of like maybe having the bar earlier in the day can break that cycle of in the evenings where it's less likely to eat. People are like, well, I don't feel like it then, but why do you feel like it in the evenings? Oh, it's too early. It's like, try it and see if you still want it. You may still want it, and it's okay to have it. It might be just kind of, sometimes it can be danger in the dose.
That's usually what it is, because it's like you can have anything, but if you have too much of anything, there's probably going to be a negative to it.
Too much of a good thing. It's often too is bad.
I wanted to, moving on from fat loss, I wanted to talk to you a little bit and get your take on the fitness industry, because that's just something I wanted to pick your head on. Because obviously we've spoke before about women's health, we've spoke about fat loss, so I wanted to get your take on this because I thought it would be interesting. So a question for you would be, what is one toxic aspect of the fitness industry that you feel damages the well-being of the clients that you coach?
Misinformation.
I
know there's call out. I don't like call out culture either. I know, like, people are trying to call out the bigots that are doing misinformation, but if you're looking at social media and you have someone that is saying there's like a certain thing about foods, or sweeteners are bad, or sweeteners are X, Y, or Z, that seems to be the one in the media at the minute. And it has like a certainty on a food. It's never the answer. Food always has context. Food always has, there's always basis for it. Like, the research is changing on sweetness because there's such a new thing to us. And most of the research has been done on rats. I think the dosage, I think, is like, if you're, I think it's like 18 or 20 or 30 even. I can't remember which numbers they are, but maybe 30 Diet Cokes or Coke Zeros a day. Then they may have like the minimalist.
I probably shouldn't be having 30 Diet Cokes a day. Anyway.
Yeah, kind of like, there's a bigger issue if you're having 30 Diet Cokes a day.
Your teeth are about to fall out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I wouldn't worry about it. But I also find the same people that are worrying about sweeteners are the ones that are drinking a lot on the weekends or doing coke on the jacks. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
which one's worse?
Well, I think there was a thing as like with aspartame. It was like I think something too carcinogenic, and everyone's like, oh, so you can't have, that means Diet Coke's bad and stuff like that. And I think like iPhones were put in the same category. And
Aloe vera is more carcinogenic than sweeteners, and people are running aloe vera on their kids.
Yeah.
So like,
it's just people not understanding what's going on.
but like, yeah, people are looking for like we're fighting against labels all day, every day.
Yeah.
And people are trying to pigeonhole a food and emotionally attached to it, to go to a tribe. Food and nutrition is really, really tribal. I think I heard a quote recently. It's like, if being a kind of like a PT is quite easy, being a nutritionist is difficult because you're fighting all the myths.
Yeah.
From like, the one that annoys me is the carbs.
Yeah.
I'd be like, we couldn't play football without carbs.
No. You can't thrive without carbs.
No, and like, if I actually showed a picture to people of like how many carbs your brain needs to function on a daily basis, it's probably about a third of a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
And people are like, I can't have bread. I'm like, you can.
Yeah. And like carbs is like, it's carbs is so many different things as well. But when people think about carbs, they just think about like, you know, pasta and bread, and say, I'm gonna restrict that. And like, oh, are you not gonna have vegetables either? Oh yeah, I'm gonna have
People
vegetables.
forget that. Yeah.
What do you think about call out culture? Because like, I have two thoughts on it. One is like, people like Lane Norton is really good at it, and like I've probably learned a lot from him and stuff like that in terms of him calling out people like, you know, Carnivore MD and stuff like that. But at the same hand, I know that with like call out culture, like when you call someone out or you call someone an idiot or something like that, like they're not going to change their view. They're just going to dig their heels further into the ground, and they're not going to change their stance with it. So like, there's this element of like, oh well, at least they're, you know, debunking nutritional myths. But then there's also this other point that, well, the people who are giving out harmful advice, they're not going to change their mind if you're calling them out in a certain way.
Yeah, but I think it is where it tends to go a little bit left field is, I've no problem people calling people out for misinformation. It's when it gets personal.
Yeah, so it's calling out the idea, not the person.
Yeah. And because I think there was Jason Fung, Dr. Jason Fung. Oh no, not Jason Fung. There was another guy, Giles Yeo, was on Diary of a CEO. Yeah. And he was getting so much criticism for, like, I think it was like calories don't matter. Yeah. But it was like that edit on that video.
It's clickbait.
It's clickbait. But if you actually listen to the episode,
which most people don't.
It's kind of like, he's actually correct in what he says.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the obesity and stuff, but people went after him for his appearance of like, oh, looks a certain way, or he looks unhealthy, and you kind of like that has nothing to do with what he's trying to say.
With his information, yeah.
So it's kind of when it gets a bit personal, then I draw the line. But if it's misinformation, calling that out. But also, that person, it's kind of like Liver King. Yeah. Liver King got found out.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he's a bad person.
No.
It means that maybe there was something going on for him internally that he felt that he needed to keep that.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the episode Diary CEO again, with him, there's a lot of shit going on in his life.
Yeah.
So everyone has a story, everyone has a reason. If they know they're wrong and they're still making money off it, then that's different.
Yeah. I think with Liver King, it was like he got so big that the lie probably got bigger and bigger. It was hard to turn back from what he was saying then, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're kind of too far in.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to get out of it. Yeah, because that can happen with kind of chronic liars and stuff like that. You see it all the time with people who are committing crimes and fraud and stuff. They kind of get too caught into it, and they kind of crave that attention. I think there's one of these kind of podcasts, I think there's something about Make-A-Wish or something like that, and the person claimed that their daughter had cancer, everything, and like One Direction were even involved, giving money to this charity and stuff. But it turned out the mom wasn't very, very well, and ended up like the kid ended up passing away. The kid didn't have cancer at all. It was mental.
But the kid still passed away?
The kid passed away, but didn't have cancer. The mom was actually like keeping her kind of like away from society, away from her family, and was feeding her the drugs that she didn't need. She was giving her certain drugs because she wasn't well, and she was trying to control her. Like the other two daughters we're fine. But this daughter was kind of like, it was almost the mom reliving her youth, and was like, she was caught in that state of mind.
Yeah.
It's one of the most messed up podcasts I've ever listened to.
Sounds fucked up.
I'll send you it.
What is it called?
I'll try and find it. I'll have a look at it.
Try send me that. Okay, another thing I wanted to ask you about is, do you think over the course of your career working in the fitness industry that we're making strides forward, or do you think that we're going backwards in terms of helping the general public?
I'd like to hope that we're making strides. A bit of me thinks that we're going backwards, because I think people are so, go on to TikTok, go on to social media for their information, and there's so much information out there, and people will go for the clickest headline, clickest clickbait, and be like, right, this is what I need to believe, this is what someone has said. Like I remember having a conversation with someone, they were talking about autophagy, and they were kind of asking for your advice, and I was like, in my head I was like, I know you're not going to listen to me, I just know it. So I was like, right, here's a link to something on autophagy, and they were kind of like, I'm going to try it anyway. I was like, work away, try it. And then
sometimes people need to go through it and experience it before they realise.
There's something about autophagy and intermittent fasting and stuff like that, and I was kind of like, well, you do know as soon as you start to eat again, you've broken autophagy. And she's like, oh.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's there's a lot of information, a lot of these things.
It's like oh, if your diet worked, then why did you stop doing it?
Yeah. Well, I think
with any diet.
Yeah, I also think that like your diet doesn't necessarily need a name.
No.
I think a lot of people.
If it does have a name, there's probably a problem with it.
Yeah, and if it works for you,
yeah, that's fair.
Great. If it doesn't impact your relationship with it, great. If it doesn't impact.
But the problem is people, like I always get a lot of people coming to me and say, yeah, it worked for me, but now it doesn't work for me.
Oh, it worked for me. I lost 5 kg and now put on 10.
But now
that hasn't worked for you.
So it hasn't worked for you.
It worked for a short term. All diets work.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like.
That's the problem.
Yeah. All diets work.
Yeah.
And people say, I keep failing diets. No, you don't keep failing diets. The approach keeps failing you. That's the issue.
Yeah. What is one thing in the industry that you would change if you could?
Get rid of slimming clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would.
Well, that's good. That's probably, for the type of clientele that you work with, that's probably the...
I have a love-hate relationship. I wouldn't have a business without it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the yin and yang. You need one like, for the others to survive.
Lesser evil.
Yeah.
I just feel like...
Do you think they negatively impact the public as much now as they did a couple of years ago? In terms of like, do you think people are more aware of the
certain generation are more aware?
Yeah.
If you're of a certain age, I still think.
Yeah. Well, it is a generational thing, isn't it? Even with diet culture in general.
Yeah, I think if you're of a certain age, which I don't want to bracket in, it's probably around kind of like the 40s and 50s and 60s. Age where you're kind of probably still believing it's the thing. But also if you look, I think one of them have bought the weight loss drug, the obesity drug, Wegovy, I think it's the one. And I'm not pro or anti the drug. I think
it's context.
It works. It shuts down your hunger, suppresses your hunger completely. The research will show it's great. Yeah. But I think some people need it. Some people don't need it. Yeah. And it's kind of like, well, it may not be needs to be pushed on the people that don't. And it's kind of be like the reason we're doing it. You may think they're doing it for their good of their health, but they think it's ultimately, they see that they can make profit out of it.
Yeah. Like the fitness industry in general, a lot of it is just profit-based or profit motivation.
It's getting found out a little bit. I think a lot of people are finding good people, but also I also find that a lot of people who are in the fitness industry, from my own experience, have their own issues with food, and they get pushed onto people, which isn't fair. And people can impact relationship with food. It can impact relationship with mental health. I've had clients come from coaches, should I say, who have lost their menstrual cycles. I'm kind of like, there's a responsibility. Yeah. Like, it's all well and good getting the payments, getting all the money and stuff like that, but there's a little bit of kind of like, there's no difference between that person and the Liver King. Yeah.
Well, do you think would that be another thing that you would change out of fitness industry? The fact that a lot of these clients go to that type of person because they see them, body fat 13% or 3% and like lean, dehydrated, starved themselves, has a terrible relationship with food, but like the client that you work with probably doesn't even know what a good relationship with food looks like in the first place.
No, and I think it is. It's people. On a good relationship with food is very different for everyone. I think people will be like, "Oh, that person looks like that, so I want they did this approach to look like this, and if I get to that, I'll be happy." But you don't know what they've done to it. You don't know what they're taking. You don't know what they're doing, and I think sometimes we can buy into what someone looks like first, rather than actually looking at, right, is this approach for me? Because weight loss is is an emotional thing. It comes back to that control thing. The weight that we have, or we are, is often linked to control. It's controlling what other people think of us. We can't control that, but we can try to control our food. We can try to control what our weight is. And it's often very much linked to validation, acceptance, peace of mind, being loved, being cared, being accepted. It's kind of like, they're all great from other people, but what do you want?
Well, a lot of people think that, okay, well, if I look like them, or if I reach a certain body weight, then I'll be happy, then I'll have the life I live, then I'll be content, and they put themselves through extremes to get there, just to realize that they're still not content. And
well, I've been 63 kilos, and I've also been nearly 90 kilos. I'm a hell of a lot happier. I have no idea what I weigh, I can guess, but it's somewhere in around.
Well, that's kind of that's the whole point, that you don't know, because
I literally couldn't give less of a shit. I don't even own a scales, and it's not from running away from it. I literally just couldn't be arsed. I'll know how I feel in my clothes, and my goal has definitely changed since I went back playing football. It's like, right, am I actually able to manage my asthma? Am I being able to be one of the fittest lads in the team? And am I able to still chase after people and being able to be okay and recover after it?
Not be bedbound for 7 days because your body's aching for running.
Well, that still happens, but that's going to get worse. Back to season next week. Can't wait.
On the massage bed table.
Physios, keeping physios in business. Yeah.
But it's like you said, it's like okay, this is the outcome that you want, but can we find a way that you actually enjoy the process and be process orientated, where we're actually enjoying what we're doing, whether it's hip thrusting 100 kilos, or getting back out playing football, or being fit enough to go for a hike with your family, or whatever it is. It's like enjoying the now, rather than I'll be happy when I get to this goal weight.
But you won't be happy.
No.
Because it's not about the weight. It's about how you're looking. Like, you don't go into a shop, into Zara, and go, can I have a size 70 kilos, please? You go into size by how you look and feel. Like, obviously, sometimes it can impact your mood when you're going into a medium rather than a small, or a large rather than a medium. But Zara is tight clothes. Like, it's like there are other shops that you can go into. So it's,
if you're not a small there, just go to another shop.
Exactly. Spend your money elsewhere. There are other shops. Everyone.
Moving on from that, I want to talk to you a little bit about like coaching philosophy and stuff like that. So, what's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you started coaching?
When I first started, after coming out of my course, I came out of it more confused. I knew fuck all going into the course, and I came out knowing fuck all. It was more...
Was it fuck all in terms of...
it was just too much information to take in at the beginning. Like, there was... You come out of it and you're kind of like, you've got all this information, but no practical element to it. It's kind of like, oh, here's those theory on what a 1 RPE or a 2 RPEs look like. But you're kind of like, that's not practical to Jane and Mary, who have never had...
they have gym anxiety. And
it's none of that. The biggest thing I would say is, I know this now, but I didn't know about the impact the menstrual cycle had. And now I talk about it too much.
A question actually I wanted to ask you about was, because I did a post, a girl asked me on a story, and she asked me about menopause and weight loss, and obviously I a lot of times I refer back to the previous podcast that we did together and stuff like that, and I would follow a lot of your stuff in terms of women's health for any kind of information. Do you get a lot, or some women who would, like, I know most of the women that you coach or who follow you, most of them appreciate the information that you give out, but do you ever get like that 1% who are like, oh, he's just mansplaining, don't listen to him?
So for the very, very brief time I went onto TikTok, I put up the post.
It's the Wild West in there.
Oh, fucking hell. Idiots. So I put up a post about like the different stages, and I or the different stages of the cycle, or I put on some video. It's like writing on a piece of paper, and it was fast forward, and you talk about all that. And then I got, I'd say, about 10 comments in the space of half an hour saying, you can't be explaining that, it seems too about textbook answer, you never understand me. And I was kind of, one of them just wouldn't let it go. And I was kind of like, I bit and I bit and I bit. It's like, okay, so is the issue that I'm a male, or is the issue the information? And she goes, it's because you're a man. It's like, okay, why am I the issue? And she goes, I was told what to do as a kid. Okay, so that's the issue. It's not me. And she goes, yeah, apologies.
Yeah.
And I was also with the menopause one I put up, was like, oh, can you lose weight around perimenopause? And I woke up the next morning with about 600 extra followers. So there was a doctor over in the States who saw the post, and she was like, PTs, this PT from Ireland, you should avoid what he's saying completely. And then a perimenopause expert, Amanda Teeb, she kind of shouted it out and did a big video. And she's like, he has said exactly what the actual information is. The doctor's issue is because he's a male.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, are we really, like, it impacts everyone, perimenopause. It does impact people. People genuinely feel like they're losing their minds when with perimenopause, unfortunately. But it impacts family as well. It impacts partners, it impacts kids, it impacts everyone. And I think the more people that understand it, and the more people that aren't condescending assholes about it, I think it's a hell of a lot easier to manage, because I know there's a massive gap in the knowledge still about it. Like, we could be having this conversation again in 5 years and it could completely change again. Yeah. Because there was a massive stigma to like HRT and stuff, and some people are still scared. I just had a conversation on Friday with someone who was scared to take the HRT, and obviously like, it's pro-choice, but the information you have was from the 90s, and it was only one paper, and it's been disproven hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And sometimes you can be, I find sometimes because you know what the answer is, it's being careful of not overwhelming that person with your own opinion. It's kind of like, right, there's the information, pros and cons. Yeah. You go do what you want. I'll be like, go get your hormones checked with the doctor, and then you can make the educated decision with the doctor. They'll always give you the pros and choice. If you've gone to the doctor, they'll be like, this is what we could do, this is what we could do, and it's up to you to latch on to what you want. My job is to kind of give you the information. That's not medical advice, but kind of saying, right, now pick and choose what you want to do. Yeah,
and you can choose it or not, or you can get pissed off because he's a man or not. But there seems to be, like, on social media, this big kind of gender war anyway between males and females, and but I think
it's like, if you think about it, for a very long time, the patriarch has been, and I think I was watching the Sinead O'Connor documentary. Have you watched it? Yeah. I only watched it on Friday night. I was like, she was way ahead of her time. Misunderstood, way ahead of her time. And she was seen as a nutcase. Yeah.
It's a shame that she had to die for everyone to kind of realise, including myself, like, of everything that she's done.
But it's the same people that are praising her were the same people that were rejecting her and calling her out like years ago. Yeah. So it's kind of like, people will always jump for these sensations headlines to kind of sell medias and stuff like that. But I think life's too fucking short for these gender wars.
What is a mistake that you made that comes to mind when coaching clients?
I think when I very first started was that they probably didn't want it enough.
What do you mean by that?
So sometimes when you get a client and you don't understand, I didn't have the skill set of like understand habits, behaviours, belief systems, all that kind of stuff. I didn't have the education myself. It's like, the client isn't tracking the calories, they're weak,
they've no willpower. They're not disciplined enough.
Yeah, so that probably I realised that after kind of 6 months, I went to do lift the bar.
They're brilliant.
Yeah, so they have a lot of webinars and kind of like, okay, so this isn't actually what's going on. Yeah. But I also hear still coaches saying it. So it's like, not that they don't want it enough, it's what some of them want it too much and will do anything and everything to get there, or else they'll do anything and everything to not get there because they're afraid of success.
Would you ever go into the space of coaching coaches on these kind of topics?
I've thought about it. 2024, maybe I need to kind of fluff it out a little bit. I've thought about doing something with a few things. I just need to fluff it out a little bit.
Because then it's like you preventing coaches from making the mistakes that you made, and expanding how many people you're helping through that. Yeah,
I would kind of like, I know there's definitely bigger experts, like Dr. Gary Mendoza would be habits and behaviours. I'm never going to have the level of...
We talked about self-belief though earlier.
It's not self-belief. It's staying in my lane.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What do you think makes anything right or wrong? And I think we've touched on this a little bit before, but what do you think, this is the last question, what do you think anything makes right or wrong in terms of whether it's food decisions, business decisions, life decisions? Like, how do we distinguish between this is the right decision or the wrong decision?
Has it been in line with your values? And has it added to your life?
Yeah.
Because obviously we're quite reactive.
Yeah.
If you take that step back, like, I get it wrong. I'm human. Sue me. Or please don't sue me. I get it wrong with clients sometimes as well. I get it wrong with business stuff. I get it wrong with relationship stuff. I get it wrong with mates. I get it wrong. There's times you say something. Sometimes I can be way too direct.
Yeah.
I'm very aware of that. But it's also, if I haven't slept the night before, I am an asshole to be around. I just go, yeah.
So before you make a decision, have a nap.
Or have loads of caffeine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's accepting. It's kind of looking at is it aligned with your values, and is it bringing you where you want to go? And if it isn't bringing you where you're going, it's like, right, taking a step back and saying, right, is actually going to, if that was to happen again, would I do anything differently? If the answer is still no, that's okay. If the answer is yes, well then try to make sure that the next time it is that's more in line where you want to go.
Yeah. Core values and that's only something that I've kind of took on over the last year or so, in terms of my own life, and then helping clients with their food decisions with that, like being able to distinguish what's important to you is really important.
Yeah, and it's a tough exercise to do.
Yeah.
It takes time, and I think a lot of people feel that they should have other things in line. They're kind of like, they sometimes can see finance as number one.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, well, why is my finance and my money really important? And it's kind of like, it can be too honest sometimes. Some people don't want the truth. Some people don't want the answer. It's okay to have the nice things if it makes you happy and stuff, but why does it make you happy?
Yeah. Who is this trying to validate?
Yeah, like I'm trying to, I'm trying to remember the name of the book now. It's something about like ego, but it's kind of like...
Ego's the enemy, or the monk in the Ferrari?
Will Storr, Monkey Stole the Ferrari, or Who Bought the Ferrari, is one of my favourite books.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Will Storr is the name of the author. I can't remember it now, but he talks about that, or it's a status game. Yeah, so he talks about like everything we do on a daily basis is based off status.
Yeah.
This
podcast here, status for me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But like, you look at someone and the first thing you do is you check them up and down and say, right, where am I ranked? First thing, what's the first question you do when you meet someone new?
Yeah.
What do you do for a living?
What do you do, yeah.
And I'm kind of like, I couldn't give a shit.
Yeah. Or if you're in America, it's like, how much money do you make?
Yeah, exactly. Or as you look at someone and say, right, this person's attractive, this person's not attractive. It's kind of like, where do I rank on this? And what he says in it is like, an awful lot of people think they're actually more attractive than they actually are. But that is, and then when people get rejected on dates and in love life, that's why they struggle with it, because like they think they're up here, but they're probably around here, and they probably need to bring this down a little bit further. And it's fine.
And some people are up here.
Yeah,
need to
but some
down.
People are chocolate and they eat themselves like if they could. So
we have to wrap it up now, but before we go, tell the listeners a little bit about where they can find more of your content, more of anything they want to know more about you. Where can they go?
Yeah, so people can find me at Shane Walsh Fitness on Instagram. The Shane Walsh Podcast is on iTunes and up on Spotify. And then there's the Female Fat Loss Program, which is the group coaching. And then there's the one-to-one coaching with myself. And there's a new coach coming on to help out with the group coaching now. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Brilliant. And I'll have everything in the show notes for you as well. Thanks for watching. If you like that episode and you want to see more content like this, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you on the next one.